Welcome to the Truer Business Podcast with Cara Ferreira
and Lauren Van Mullum. This season, we're looking at how online entrepreneurs built businesses around what they wanted for their lives.
We're talking to people who broke out of the follow my formula mindset to find what worked for them so that you can find the way that works for you.
What do you really want?
And today we're bringing on Katie Oglesby, who is someone that we've actually both worked with on her website, Lauren doing the copy and me doing the design. And one of the things we really want to talk to her about is like how she got into her business thinking she was going to be doing health coaching and then totally pivoted.
Yeah, the pivot was a huge part of her story. And then how she built her business with such a delicious community focus, I think is what really stands out to me about this conversation. But there are so many standout moments and so many actionable, like get your notebooks out kind of conversations.
Right. There are so many nuggets in here. And she does have, it's a like tangible, like builds gardens for people in her area business. And then she also has an online component to it. But everything she talks about, there's ways that it could be adapted to either style of business.
All right, shall I launch into the bio? Katie Oglesby is a Wisconsin-based garden designer and garden and healthy lifestyle coach, committed to helping people develop a deeper connection to their food through the transformative experience of organic gardening. She is the founder of the Kitchen Garden Design House, a Wisconsin-based business that specializes in crafting bespoke kitchen gardens that seamlessly blend elevated aesthetics with sustainable garden-to-table living practices. Katie also runs the Garden to Table community, an online membership for new gardeners, all learning to support their health and family's well-being with their own gardens and garden to table recipes. And I have to confess, I've wanted to join that membership since she mentioned it to me several years ago. And the only thing stopping me is I'm a Southern California gardener and our climates are so different.
So let's jump into the episode and we'll hear all about it from Katie. All right. And so, yes, we're here with Katie today, who we've actually both worked with during different phases of her website launch and relaunches. And so, yeah, Katie, why don't you tell us a bit about sort of how you started in entrepreneurship? And I know that was, 5-6 years ago that we did your first site when you were thinking of doing health coaching.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's been a journey. Yeah. So I was working in the legal field for a long time, switched to financial services, and I just started to garden. And I had gotten sick and went through that whole journey, went to is it IIN, right? I can't even remember now. Kara and I both went there, started doing the health coaching thing, had gotten certified in Pilates, and still working in financial services at the time. And I got Kara to do my website. Everything was kind of ready to go. And I had my first photo shoot and my photographer was out in my backyard. She's actually kind of the pivotal person to me. She was like, I'm confused why you're doing health coaching and not this. It was such an important part of my health and journey, but it didn't dawn on me to convert it into the business, part of the business, even though it was back there and I was using it for pictures and things like that. And that's when it really kind of shifted and changed. And Kara had to redo my website and Lauren had to rewrite all my copy. But so it was kind of like, yeah, you're right. And you kind of go through these stages and they set you up and I'm like, okay, this is what I'm going to do. And I didn't know what I didn't know. And I never had ran an online business before. I'd always done in-person, brick and mortar type things. And so it took me a while to wrap my brain around like an online or digital or some other form of that. And so the gardening thing actually felt better because I could do that in person. But at the same time, I invested all of this. I'm like, how do I blend these two together? And it was really the garden that helped transition my health journey. And so that's where that component became more of the emphasis on the one thing that I could control at the time was how I nourished myself. And that was through food. And I was growing it myself. And so that really changed to be more of the premise of what the business was. Now, obviously the health part supports that, but the business literally flipped and everything had to be redone. And it was about in the first year, really, that I realized that not that I had made a mistake, right? We all learn, but that was going to be the direction I was going. So I stayed working full time because one of the things that I could recognize about myself was that I was terrible at tech, terrible at grammar. And I knew that my zone of genius, where that was, and that if I could stay working and refine that zone of genius and stay in my lane and pay the people that knew what they were doing to do those other portions, right? So I had an option. I could have left financial services and tried to DIY all of this while having no income, or I could prioritize working, having some income, and paying the people to get this right. Well, not the first time, but the second time, but essentially getting it right off the bat, right? Like I knew enough to know that Karen knows me. I'm not going to be DIYing my website, right? And I'm definitely not writing my copy. And that digital world too, there was a lot of these pressures to write in a certain way, and it was not how I was personally. And so it didn't really fit. And so it was really, truly a godsend that I found the two of you, because business would not be where it is now if I had not paid the people to do what they do best and me stay in my own lane.
I love that approach.
Yes. I mean, yes, as service providers, of course we do. But I want to highlight a couple of parts of your journey that I've seen played out again and again with so many of my clients, because they're all coming to coaching from doing something else, and coaching is new for them. And very often, like I would say 9 times out of 10, the niche or something like really crucial, like the entire service offerings, like there's something huge that changes in that first year, and usually within the first 3 to 6 months. So like I'll come in and they're like, I'm ready to invest. I'm going to get the website. I'm going to get the copy. I'm going to get the photo shoot and all the things. And then 3 months later, everything has to change. It's so normal. Like, I just want to say that's not a failure. That is a normal growth stage, and nobody talks about it. Everybody says, oh, you've got to have everything figured out before you invest. And often, like, yes, that would be wonderful if that's the way it worked. But often the investment forces us to get really serious and try things out for the first time. And then we learn, and then we do things differently. And that's so cool.
So did you actually have health coaching clients in that first year? Or were you the gardening was just what it always was?
Never did one health coaching session. Like that just goes to show, like instantly and it was kind of a relief, honestly, because I was like, oh yeah, okay. Like I didn't really, I didn't think about that portion of it or how I was going to do it. But you have to be willing to pivot. I mean, that is really, if I wasn't willing to pivot, I mean, my website would have been closed down a long time ago. But once you start doing something, like Lauren said, you realize you're like, okay, I'm somebody that's such a visual learner and tactile learner. So it's like, I had to actually get out there and try to do this and realize, oh yeah, this isn't what I want to do. This isn't going to work the way I want it to. And there's a better way of doing it.
And so then you were leveraging your website to find garden installation clients, and most of them liked your approach because it was garden to table and there was a health focus. Like, how did that all sort of end up transitioning?
So that was the thing. So it's like, okay, I was growing in ground here. So just a little bit of a backstory. I'd grown at the farmers markets, then I'd gotten sick. So then I came back to my own garden with a much different approach. So I was like, I'm going to intentionally grow the things that I've now taught myself that are going to support the ailments I know I have, right? So the intentionality really shifted. There were some misconceptions in the gardening industry, especially being in the Midwest, of like what you can grow, how long you can grow for. And I learned that at going through that farmer's market, right? Like, even though some things didn't really amount to anything, there's always a lesson in it. And that really kind of changed how. So when I would start working with people, a lot of them actually had either a health problem, a health journey, or their parents got cancer, or there was some triggering thing that they knew they needed to live better. But the in-ground gardening was a turnoff, right? It's not the greatest looking thing. People think of the victory garden. It's too much work. So it's like, how can we make this accessible for busy families, but still get them out there growing their own food? So that's where the raised bed garden installations came into play. It was kind of like meeting people where that they're pretty in your backyard, they're functional, we can still support your family's health goals, and we can make it attainable for more people.
So did you have raised beds gardens, or had you switched to that yourself?
So I switched to it only by default because we had really poor drainage and we had some rainy springs and all my crops were rotting from the ground up. So I was feverishly like whipping together some raised beds, which I'd never grown in before. And then I saw somebody that was doing this online. I flew down to Houston, watched how they were installing it, came back, and I said to Matt, I drew up this plan on the plane home. I need you to make these beds. We're like doing this. It's in April. And he's like, oh my God, okay. He's used to my bright ideas. And then I did my own. And I'm like, okay, here's my example. And then I found a few people that were willing, like I did them for cost, put them in around the community, and started like having some examples to showcase. And that's where then it kind of really started to trickle.
So it turned out the raised beds were also the solution to getting more people comfortable with the idea of growing their own food.
100%.
Again, doing it at cost is huge because you've got to do a little bit to build up your portfolio.
Yeah, you do what you got to do. Yeah. And it worked. I mean, and I'm in a small community, but word of mouth is powerful. And I think that once somebody experienced it, or they would go to somebody's home and experience it, or people that come here that never wanted to garden and they experience it, it's like all of a sudden, okay, I want one of these, right? So I think some of the experiences we've gotten so disconnected from our food or where it comes from and the taste of it. So that has really that's helpful also when it comes to, people that maybe didn't necessarily even know they wanted one.
I'm so curious, how did you start to build your portfolio? Because I think that's one of the big things that a lot of service providers, business owners have to do, and starting it can be so intimidating.
Yeah, it can be intimidating. And like I said, I was still working another job. So I made sure that I could pay my personal finances because I think that's a stress in itself. And that would have taken away from, what you're trying to do. So I put one in my dad, even though my dad was like, I can't you believe I'm going to be gardening? Like he's like, how stuff cheap is at the grocery store, Katie. And so, like that was my toughest client, was overcoming my own family. And then I had some friends that put some in. And like I said, I just discounted them. I did it for cost. I hired a photographer to take pictures of them. So I started to have professional pictures of them. And I made sure I included people in the pictures, right? Like there's kids and that really just, I think also trickled online, trickled locally. And then some of the digital services kind of started to come into play too, as we were starting to build that installation side.
Right. And so now you have also like the garden table community, the membership piece of it. So how did that evolve?
Yeah. So we have a membership. So I started to realize like, okay, we have all these people that are new gardeners, but how are we going to keep them going, right? We all need some accountability to a certain extent. And it can be daunting. Like Lauren and I have had this conversation, like get off of Google. And so many people would get wrapped up on the million ways to do something instead of just doing it. And when I started gardening, I never read a gardening book. I never watched a YouTube video. I just went out and did. So it's like, how can I make this accessible for people? One-on-one coaching is expensive. So this is a more economic way we can all grow together, and you can get your monthly to-do lists and recipes and troubleshoot. And now there's new relationships that have come out of that community, which is also amazing.
Yeah, no, I do love that you have that. It's like a natural extension. Like, okay, now they have the physical installation. How do we give them what they need to use it? And do you have people find the membership and do it who don't have installations with you and they're just learning how to garden?
Yep. I have people that we have not installed their garden, or they're growing in ground because it still applies. But I don't think I've had anybody really leave the membership that's paid annually and started with us, because you're a forever learner when you're a gardener, right? And so I think that in the community has become important to people, and the seasons change. And so we're always learning. And that's kind of the fun part of that membership, is that I can just keep educating and learning and growing together. And again, it keeps them going too. I don't want somebody to make an investment and later down the road feel like I'm overwhelmed, I don't know what to do, and then abort mission and just leave it sit back there. So it is a great progression of still working with me, just at a different capacity.
I think so much of gardening is, at least for me, it's having accountability to actually do the thing. And like, you can buy all the special gardening calendars that tell you exactly when to do what. You could buy all the books, because I have all of those things. But having somebody to actually say, okay, now's the time, we're all going to do this. It's so beautiful.
It is true. I mean, even it's my thing, but I could see where people, you do get overwhelmed or you forget, right? Like life is busy. And so you just have me there to give you your gentle nudge. Do this, make sure this is done, make sure that's done. And it makes the experience much easier too, right? So you don't have to think about it. I mean, you can see the wheels are turning and every year they learn more and more and they remember it, but it's a lot, and people's lives are busy. So it's a great community.
I just want to say we're talking about gardening, but we're really talking about business. Just consider this a giant metaphor that goes for the whole time.
Yes, yes, yes.
No, it's also true. The accountability for anything is really key. And then also, I think, like you're saying, Katie, at this point, you had been out there and doing it and you sort of knew all the steps. And we sometimes forget, no matter what it is. Like if I'm teaching website design, like building a website, it may seem simple and very basic to me, but it's not to the person who's never done it before.
It's very true. So with any business, having that ongoing support or a lower ticket item to keep that going and keeping those relationships going, even from a business standpoint, a revenue standpoint, and just helping people or coaching people to learn something. And our goal is that they've made this lifetime decision or change or whatever it is. So having service offerings, I think, that support that long term is important too.
Oh my gosh, yes. The structure of your business, actually your business, my business, and Kara's business structurally have a lot of similarities because we have these products. Like I have my ethical copywriting workbooks, but then I'm creating support systems so people can actually succeed using those in all the ways that they need support. And that's what I see in your farm to table membership. It's like, here's this beautiful garden. And when you get to that point of, oh, shoot, now what do I do with it? I've got you.
Yeah, it is, right. You have that support built in there. And, I've been victim of buying something and then like, okay, now what? Like there's no ongoing. And that's kind of a lesson to be like, I don't want to leave my clients hanging and my community hanging. When I've purchased something and been like, well, this was great, but now I'm really still overwhelmed. And in the same place as when I started.
Yeah, I think that's beautiful. And I think relationships, to me, looking at your business through the lens of designing your website, as you mentioned, you have the people in the photos, you have the kids. Relationships are key. I know you do like a party almost every year now.
We do.
Do you want to talk about that?
Yes, yeah. Yes. So again, the community was an important piece to me when I was starting this business. And, there's always just like a joke here that we grow Memorial Day to Labor Day and, and I really wanted to change how people viewed this and how they connected to their food. And again, like keep them going. And so we do a big client garden to table appreciation party every year. I have chefs that pull and cook out of the garden. They change sometimes yearly. The community gets together, the chefs talk, the kids do a scavenger hunt throughout the garden, they get to see new things. And that is such a great event. And now people talk about it in the community and try to get tickets to it, so it's really become something, but it's my gratitude back, but still supporting the community. And even from a marketing standpoint, right? People talk about it. People are engaged in the community, and that really helps word of mouth for me, for my business also. So it's a great event. It's come a long way and it's fun. And I just love to watch everybody's faces and hear them talk about their experience in their garden and share. And I think, okay, I've really accomplished what I've set out to do here one by one.
And that's primarily for like people who have hired you for their installations.
Yep. Installations, or if someone's referred business to me, I include them in that. I think that's important to support referrals that come to you. And then the membership gets to come to it also.
I think this is so applicable to just a wider conversation about, as business owners, we all talk about building our communities and nurturing our communities. And you're doing this in a more literal sense than most of us get to, because most of us are online only, but you actually are embedded in your community, creating community. I'm envious. I'd love to figure out a way for me to do that virtually.
Well, I think you do it. I mean, the crafted copy hour is a way to get people together, right? But it's not like, I guess, find a way to do the online party version where we all get together at the end of the year to celebrate the projects. But I think Lauren and I just recorded an episode the one that would have aired before this one, about how like a big part of our business growth was finding ways to build those referral networks. You could see that part of it's just like the enjoyment of coming together, but you're building that strategically and intentionally into your business, that you're going to be leveraging those referrals.
Yeah, I mean, I think referrals are like so important. I've never really had a referral that's gone where I've actually gotten a no. I think I said that, when business comes off of Instagram or other places, but when it's a quality referral, I've never gotten a no. And I think that's important to foster. And, like Kara referred me to Lauren when I was like, I need a copywriter, right? Like I trust Kara. I think, that goes a long way when you're building a business. And so finding a way to foster those is super important. So that's my gift back.
Yeah. And I think so many online business owners in particular are like, oh, like the internet is going to feed me all of my clients. But especially when you're starting out, like the referrals are really what get you going. So
yeah.
Yeah. And nurturing those existing clients. I was talking to my VA this morning, and I was explaining to her, because she's new, how the Craft and Copy Hour works. And it's my free thing. And usually we only offer free things to new clients, to prospective leads. And this is a free thing that actually works to bring in people who have worked with me before that want to continue to hang out. And then they continue to buy, they continue to refer their friends. And it's this really gorgeous ecosystem. Now I have to actually develop a freebie for new people, but like that one works really well.
So in terms of your client breakdown now, Katie, I'm assuming a bunch still are coming from referrals and people who have seen installations of your gardens elsewhere. You mentioned you get clients from Instagram now. Are you getting people? I know a big part of the new website rebuild was sort of like really showcasing your portfolio and making sure like the towns are in there for SEO purposes. What's your sort of client acquisition looking like now?
So the website has been big. I mean, traffic's definitely gone up. We've definitely improved it when we relaunched it last year. It's also been a great sales tool for me when I sit with clients to show some of those portfolio pages. So I use it for that also. But we get a little bit of Pinterest. We started working on Pinterest as far as driving to the blog and things like that. So it was funny. I got an installation client off of a Pinterest post, which then they went to the website and realized I installed gardens, and they knew me locally, but they didn't realize that I actually. So it just goes to show, sometimes I'm always like, everybody knows this, but they don't. And that's, we have to keep at it on there. So I'm starting to see more of those things start to trickle in, and I'm better about asking, how did you find me? And I thought that was like the first one. I was like, oh, it's interesting. She pinned my
Pinterest.
I wouldn't have, we literally just started working on that part of the business. And the fact that she knew me locally from two different people that I work with regularly, but it didn't correlate that I installed gardens was, again, an eye-opening thing to me until she went to the website.
And then the other thing, I think you have a Google business profile too, just
Yes.
to help with like local search, which I think anyone who has any sort of location-based business, everyone should have one anyway, but if you have location-based business, you absolutely have to get one. So.
Yes, you absolutely. It's funny. I just got an email today that was telling me how many hits I got off the Google profile. And the Google reviews, especially for a local or brick and mortar business, are important. People are looking at those. And so making sure that we foster and try to get as many people to take that step for us is important too.
I want to go back a minute to, you mentioned when you actually first switched to doing the raised garden beds, you flew down to Texas I'm guessing this is Crystal, who you actually referred me to.
Yes. Well, Crystal and I were both in this little mastermind together. So that's how I met Crystal. So again, I'm a very visual and tactile learner. So I get the gardening part. I got all that, but I wanted to actually see how does this work step by step.
So do you join a mastermind to learn about doing the raised beds? Okay.
Mm-hmm. I joined a mastermind. Crystal was in it. All of it was great. The business stuff was great, but that was really like the most important part for me. I was like, I want to see exactly how this is done and how I'm going to go home and implement this myself. And we're not the same as Houston, so we've made some adjustments on things, but that was really important. And again, that's where I said, I'm going to pay to take not shortcuts, but I'm going to pay to learn from people who are already doing something so I could kind of accelerate. Like I had a goal that I wanted to be not working 2 jobs the rest of my life. And I had a 5-year goal that I wanted to accomplish that, So it was like, how do I advance myself as much as possible? And what do I need to learn how to do? And what do I need to outsource?
Well, I love that because I think a lot of people, and again, I think this is more in the online space than, if you're looking to solve a problem that's, offline. But I think they're sort of like, for my business, I just need the thing that's going to bring in clients, make me the money. And they kind of will like fall prey to like, oh, this course promises this, but it's not actually addressing a specific problem that I'm having. Whereas you're like, my specific problem is I want to switch to raised garden beds and I don't know enough about it. So like, I'm going to learn that instead of going to like some big garden business course would be a correlation. Or I'm thinking of people who are like, I'm going to like sign up for this big course that's going to teach me how to make a bunch of money, instead of like, I know my people are on Pinterest, so I'm going to take the course that teaches me Pinterest and finding the specific issue area you're dealing with.
It's easy to get sucked down that hole, especially when you're starting a business and all these courses and all these, we're going to solve this or fix this or teach you how to do this. It's a lot to sift through when you're starting out. And I think it was just really my philosophy from the beginning was, what do I need to do to educate myself to do my part of my role? And everybody else, who can I find the best people to support the other parts of the business that were my weak links?
It also sounds like you're lucky in that your husband has sort of agreed to go along with
I'm
helping you
lucky.
with all these installations.
He's a good sport. Yes, I'm very lucky. He builds all of our cedar raised beds and helps with the project management we install. So yes, good team, very fortunate there. And that was the other thing. If I hadn't had that, I had seen in the mastermind how they were using subcontract, you know what I mean? So I know like if a backup plan of, if this isn't viable or something happens or he gets hurt, like how do I pivot and how do I build that into the business as far as pricing is, things like that I think are super important too. So that was also helpful for me just to kind of see if this isn't the solution. What are my other options? Mm-hmm.
And then I have seen you do workshops, like collaborations with other people. Do you want to talk a bit about how, also, I feel like I don't know if it's from masterminds that you've done, but I feel like you're sort of networked now, not just in your area with other gardeners,
Yeah, so other gardeners, being a part of some communities. And I did in the beginning reach out to several other health coaches because at the time, even though I maybe wasn't going to do health coaching, there were certain things I noticed that they were doing. And so I would reach out and say, can I compensate you for an hour of your time? And can you explain to me how you're doing this? Those relationships ended up getting me, even though I was a gardener with this health base, working with other parallel businesses was great for building my email list and things like that. And so that was really important for the online and digital side, was how do I put myself, networking with other gardeners was great, but we're all doing the same thing. How do I get myself out where I still have I don't say connection or a branch to it, where that would still, people would be interested. And so we have a little digital course and we'd offer it affiliates. We'd teach a little class. Any of the people on that email list that wanted to buy, there was an affiliate compensation for that. And it just helped me build the list. It helped me get better at what I do. The digital side was hard for me because I've ran physical or in-person businesses, but wrapping my head around a funnel, Lauren probably wanted to do, I couldn't wrap my head around some of this. So I'm like, I have to be a part of it, I guess, to understand it. But so locally, we collaborated with people, again, interior designers, things that were in parallel businesses. And then digitally, I went into the health space and worked with a lot of different health practitioners to kind of help, again, build and support that and kind of diversify my reach.
I'm so glad you said that about reaching out to other people who were doing something that you were trying to figure out how to do, offering to compensate them for their time and expertise, building these relationships on top of that. I did that when I was repositioning, when I was pivoting my business. I reached out to a few copywriters who were doing something cool that I thought I might want to do. And then getting on a call with them was incredible, because very often it was like, oh, that thing that you saw that you think is really cool, it actually isn't working out at all. And I'm going to be doing something completely different next month. You learn so much.
You learn so much. And people were so gracious to help. And I think offering to compensate people for their time is important, but they're willing to help you. And it's like, you can take any model and kind of you can see how it could have applied to your business, but they tell you what worked and what didn't and how they're pivoting. And these relationships I still have years later, even though I'm not really, necessarily even thinking about health coaching, but it just kind of helps your business community and having people to reach out to when you have questions. I think it makes a huge difference.
I do love that. I will say I have never once thought of, can I compensate you for the time? Like, can I get like an hour? Like, usually it's sort of like, we can refer clients back and forth.
Yes.
So that's why it's worth getting to know each other. But like, that's might seem obvious, but I think it's not something people necessarily think of. Like, can I pick your brain? I will pay you for that time.
Yeah, that is a really nice thing. And it really shows so much appreciation for their time and expertise. But I have to say, copywriters introduce themselves, email me fairly often, and I'm happy to talk with them for free. Like, we'll set up a little tea date and I'll be like, okay, here's your crash course.
Yeah.
Get ready for the fire hose.
Yeah.
It's true.
Yeah. So you mentioned a 5-year plan, and I do know that you have transitioned out of working in your other job and you are doing it full time now. So do you want to share a bit about what that path you laid out for yourself looked like? Did you meet your goals? How is it all going?
Yeah. So I left last April, which was, it's tough to let go. 20 plus years of working for something, that paycheck. It was hard, but I gave myself a deadline. I said, you can always go back and get another job if you need to. And if you don't try this now, I'm going to regret this. And I knew I was going to get to a point where I'm going to end up in the same position I was in 2016 when I got sick with too much on my plate. Also, I was hyper aware that I couldn't do that to myself. So something had to give. So, there was some budget, there was some things I wanted to, like, if I can get this done and this done and this done, hit some financial goals.
Were you saving up a little bit for this launch?
I was saving up a little bit, and so my spring was booked. I had enough revenue in spring, and I thought I'm going to take this leap. And it was in April, which was probably bad time. So it's funny. I hit the ground running, and I thought I would just rebound like that. But it was an interesting, not that I fumbled, but when you have such a regimented schedule of like 5 a.m. walk the dog, 6 a.m. work, 7 shower, get to the office by 8, and then all of a sudden I wake up and I'm like, oh. So it was an interesting transition over the summer because I was so programmed to juggle all of these things. And I thought it would be no big deal, but it did take me more of an adjustment period than I thought, if I'm being honest. But I was like, I believe in myself. I will make this work. I had to journal every day that I'm going to do this and tell I can do this. And there's always something, a door will always open. And so I just took the leap of faith, but it was hard after when you have a paycheck for a long time, but I don't regret it. Just even the freedom, and it's not a criticism of where I was, but I was chained to a desk, and I value my quality of life now. It's a little bit different. I have the freedom to take my grandma to lunch or, certain things that I just couldn't do before. And I think we undervalue those little things sometimes. So that has been kind of like the silver lining of not only getting to do what I love, but having those extra things that I never had before. Underestimated those things a little bit.
Yeah, and Lauren and I have talked a lot about how the time freedom, and it's not like, like I'm working on a beach kind of time freedom. It's just like we can take breaks in the middle of the day. I know for Lauren, she wants to go make sure she has her workout time in the middle of the day. I go ride my horse in the middle of the day, and that we just like are able to make those decisions and value that so much.
Yeah, the balance. And, it's like, I listened to your guys' first podcast. I'm like, okay, see, similar thing. Like, you don't realize some of it. And if there's one day where I'm like, my brain is not working today, I can work a different day. And my creative juices, and I'm pumping things out and having the liberty to do that. My success is a little bit better at that when I have the freedom to where I don't force myself to do a task or something where I'm just not on my game that day.
Yes. Oh, working with your energy flows and ebbs, especially the ebbs. And I have like really high executive function days. And then I have days where executive function has left the building. I don't know where it went.
Yes.
Did you find though, without having the regimented schedule, like, did you have any of the issue where like getting down and like sitting at your desk was hard? Like, I know my husband's always like, he's like, I could not work for myself because I just would not get to my desk.
Oh yeah, it's tough. It was especially because I was like, I'm free from the desk. Like at first I was like, I'm like free. I get to be outside. And then I was like, oh my gosh, I better sit at my desk. Like all these. So again, like there was a bigger adjustment than I thought. I just thought, I got this. And so yeah, now the winter is better. But when it was nice outside, I'm like, I'll go work in my garden. But yeah, so you definitely, it's just learning that new balance. And I think recognizing your good days, that you're like, this is a day where I can knock everything out and just doing it. And then your days where you're like, I'm going to give myself some grace and pivot my activities.
Amazing. One thing before we get to sort of our final question, one of the themes on the podcast between like Lauren and I, and then the people we're interviewing, it's turning out to be burnout and coming back from burnout. And I know part of your health crisis that led to you getting into the garden in the first place was sort of induced partially by burnout, but just from your garden to table health lens, do you want to offer any tips out there to people just for like supporting themselves nutritionally coming back from that place?
Yeah, that's a really good point. So I do think, obviously, I believe you should buy the most freshest local food that you can, right? The nutrient density is highest. And if we fuel ourselves, I think we have a better chance of surviving or overcoming some of these burnouts. And stress was one thing for me that I didn't really think I was stressed. I'm like, I got this, I'm fine. And so taking some time, not a good meditator. My brain's like on chapter 10, my mouth's on like on chapter 3. But like I found the sauna to be a time where I'm like, I'm going to find a couple things where I'm just going to encourage myself to do those every week to take myself down a notch, because I could easily have gotten myself right back to where I was before, just my personality, my nature. So whatever those things are, every morning I walk my dogs, I get sunlight in my eyes, right? Like being in nature a couple times a day, my sauna, moving, like there's certain things now that are non-negotiables. So whatever those are for you, whether they're reading or whatever it is, but also just including maybe hitting up your local farmers market and supporting your local farmers and getting some really locally, closer it was, the most recent it was harvest, the better off it is for you. So prioritizing how you nourish yourself in whatever that means to you.
And do you meal prep as part of? Do you teach any of that with your garden to table in terms of making sure that you have things to get to? I'm asking for me. Yes, I'm always like, I have big plans, and then I'm like, crap, I'm 30 minutes late for whatever I thought lunchtime was, and I'm starving, and now I'm eating a meat stick.
Yeah. Oh, so that's a funny, and especially when like big harvests are coming in, I always tell people like, I pick something every day to eat, right? I have that luxury, but once a week, I do a mass harvest and I'm like, what are we eating this week? We're going to set this aside. So it's like I grocery shop in my backyard first. What are we eating this week? I'm going to set all those portions aside, and then the rest of it gets frozen or what till I can deal with it later possibly. And so I think once a week, I really try to make that intention in my brain. I have it kind of laid out. For me, it's like, what can I, because people will be like, well, I just wasted all of this in my garden because I didn't. Changing your mindset of like grocery shop out there first, pull that first. Then I go to the store and purchase whatever it is I need for my meals. But that is kind of what I have to do. Like I have enough greens harvested so I can always have a salad every day for lunch. I have enough berries harvested so I can throw them in my smoothie. Those staple meals that I know I have, I make sure that those are all readily available.
Quick prep too.
Quick prep. Yeah. Like quick things that I know that are ready. Or you're right. I'm grabbing a beef stick or a Go Macro bar or something as I failed at thinking that through.
So we all do it.
We all do it.
All right. Lauren, do you have anything else you want to ask, or are you ready for the final question?
Oh, no, I think we're ready for the final question.
All right. And that's just, what would you tell yourself when you were maybe first thinking of going out into business for yourself, first thinking about launching that initial health coach business? Sort of what advice would you give that baby entrepreneur version of yourself now that you know that you pivoted and all of that?
I would have told myself even back then, I probably teetered on not prioritizing. I mean, I prioritized myself, but I'm keeping that, I think, in mind. When you are starting a business, you do have to work harder, maybe in the beginning, and I get that. But I still think there's a few key things where I was hyper aware of what I was doing, but I'm like, I can't go back down this path. So when you say meal prep, like making sure I'm still not going down the path of like, I'm going to grab to go because I'm too busy and then I'm not practicing what I'm preaching, things like that. So I think really just maybe the intentionality of making sure that you're taking care of yourself.
I think of running my own business like I'm an athlete. Like I have to support my physical well-being
Yes.
or nothing else is going to work.
There you go. Yeah. There's some non-negotiables, and whatever those are, they remain non-negotiables regardless of how busy you are. The other things can wait. It's just figuring out what those are for each of you.
Well, thank you so much for sharing everything with us, Katie. I think there's so many nuggets of wisdom in here for people who are either in sort of a hybrid business situation like you are, and also for all of our online business space people, just being really intentional and prioritizing those referrals and nurturing those relationships. So
thank you for having me. And again, thank you to both. I wouldn't be here if it weren't for both of you, really, truly, honestly, supporting this business and helping me through all the things that I just had too many mental blocks to see. So I'm grateful for both of you.